That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions, and at question number 1 I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Climate Change Committee's new report sets out what this government needs to do to reach its 2045 net zero target. They would have to reduce oil and gas production by 91%, which would devastate the industry and our economy. They would have to ask homeowners to meet stringent and expensive new energy standards. They would have to get more than half the population to drive electric cars or vans by 2035. For cars, the current figure is just 2.2%, and for vans, it's less than 1%. This report lays bare the crippling cost to hard-working families and businesses. Does John Swinney think the committee's proposals are realistic?
First Minister.
So the Government will carefully consider the advice of the Committee on Climate Change before setting out our proposed carbon budgets in secondary legislation in due course. There are obviously a lot of policy proposals within the Committee's recommendations. The Government will consider those. But what I think is absolutely inescapable is that we have got to take action to tackle climate change in our society. That is why the Government is absolutely committed to achieving net zero by 2045, because the implications and the consequences of not doing so are very dramatic and very damaging for Scotland and our economy.
Russell Finlay.
So let's take a look at some of the specific suggestions in this report. To meet the SNP's net zero target, the number of cattle and sheep in Scotland would need to fall by 2 million. A cull of 2 million animals in the next decade. That's around 25%. This would drive farmers out of business, destroy the rural economy and put our food security at risk. The report says that Scots would need to eat 1/3 less meat. This is utter madness. It's an act of national self-harm. Will John Swinney today rule out going ahead with this specific plan?
First Minister.
As I said, Presiding Officer, the Government will, in an orderly fashion, consider the advice of the Committee on Climate Change and set out our own proposals for taking the action that is absolutely necessary. What I would say to Parliament is that there has been parliamentary consensus around the importance of achieving net zero by 2045. That has been supported across the political spectrum, and the Government will consider specific proposals, bring those forward, and Parliament will have the opportunity to decide on whether those proposals should be approved or not.
Well, there's absolutely no reassurance for farmers in that answer. So let's look at another one of the measures in the report. Fewer than 1% of Scotland's homes have a heat pump, and to meet the SNP's 2045 target, it would need to reach almost 70%. The number of annual installations would need to increase 5-fold in just 5 years' time. That's before we work out how people would afford them, with heat pumps typically costing between £8,000 and £15,000. That proposal is simply not realistic, and if it was imposed, it would hammer hard-working Scots. Will John Swinney please rule it out now?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, Mr Finlay talked about reassurance for farmers. As a representative of a constituency that includes many farming members of the community, I take the commitment to support the future of Scottish agriculture very seriously, and it's always been reflected. In my policy priorities. I can tell Parliament what was not reassuring to farmers was the Brexit that Mr Finlay supported that has damaged the economic opportunities.
Let's hear one another.
It's the
Mr
Brexit.
Ross. Mr Ross. You have persistently refused to abide by our standing orders, and I would ask you to leave this chamber, and you are excluded for the rest of the day. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the issue of...
Sorry, excuse me, First Minister. Mr Ross, I have asked you to leave the chamber. Please do so. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the reassurance for farmers was absent in the Brexit that the Conservatives imposed upon us, and it has caused incalculable...
First Minister, Mr Lumsden, please refrain from shouting from your seat. First Minister.
And it's caused incalculable damage on the farming industry in Scotland, and this government is working to repair that damage. The second point I would make is that the targets of reaching net zero by 2045 are not the SNP's, they are Parliament's. Yes. Democratically agreed by Parliament, because we all recognised the importance of climate action. Now, what we see just now, and it's very obvious what we're seeing in front of us, is the Conservatives deserting the action that's necessary on climate for cheap political opportunity. This government will act. This government will do what it always does, act in the best interests of the people of Scotland and secure the future of our country.
Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I can only share my colleagues' frustration at this weekly exercise in deflection and evasion. The SNP have missed their eco-targets for years. Their expert advisers now confirm that the only way to reach net zero by 2045 is by imposing radical and financially devastating policies. If John Swinney sticks to his target, he has to be honest with the people of Scotland about the price he expects them to pay. People will be forced to ditch petrol cars, rip out their boilers and change their diets. Farmers would need to get rid of cattle. Scotland's oil and gas industry would cease to exist. All of this to be paid through higher taxes and higher household bills. None of this makes sense to people in the real world. It's just not realistic or affordable. And does John Swinney agree, or will he continue making promises he knows the SNP cannot keep?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, between 1990 and 2022, Scotland's emissions halved, while the economy grew by 66.6%. Now, I cite that information to say to Parliament that it is possible for us to grow our economy and reduce our emissions by sensible investment. What does that sensible investment involve? It involves supporting the transition to renewable energy, and I mean the transition to renewable energy, where we manage carefully the way in which we generate our energy by attracting investment, which we are successfully doing to secure the energy future of our country. That is the commitment of the Scottish Government, to make sure that we deliver a just transition, that we grow the economy and that we always take the action to protect the interests of the people of Scotland. We will do that in the SNP Government, while the Conservatives play politics with the opportunists.
Question number 2, Anas Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Another week and another set of damning statistics demonstrating the SNP's mismanagement of our NHS. Now 860,925 people on an NHS waiting list. That is 1 in 6 Scots. 105,953 of them have been waiting over a year, and over 13,000 Scots have been waiting for over 2 years, the highest ever recorded. And there is a human cost. Just one example is Tracy Meehan, who has waited over 100 weeks to be treated for an ovarian cyst. Living in pain, constant anxiety, desperate to work but can't, and unable to do as much with her children as she wants. Why are hundreds of thousands of Scottish patients like Tracy paying the price for SNP failure?
First Minister.
President, as I have explained in Parliament on many occasions before, I recognise the significant impact of long waits on individual patients, and I apologise to everybody who's affected by those long waits. It's why the tackling of long waits is so central to the Government's plans to deliver the improvements in the National Health Service that are required. I'm aware of the case of Tracy Meehan. I saw the media reports upon that. My officials have already contacted NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde to raise the case of Ms Meehan. We are advised that there is dialogue underway with Ms Meehan about the procedure, and I hope that leads to progress. But there are obviously many other people like Ms Meehan who are waiting for treatment, and I apologise for those circumstances. For those reasons, the Government has invested with the largest investment in the National Health Service that has ever been made. And based on the most recent initiative we took to tackle volume of transactions in the health service and procedures, we expected there to be 64,000 additional appointments and procedures by March of this year, but in fact we achieved 105,500. So I hope that gives Mr Sarwar and members of the public reassurance that the Government is focusing on expanding capacity to tackle the issue that he raises.
Ms Sarwar.
President Officer, week after week, John Swinney comes to this chamber and apologises, and things continue to get worse. People don't want to hear sorry, they want treatment, and that is on this SNP government. Time after time, the SNP has promised to get to grips with the crisis in our NHS. They promised recovery after the pandemic, but the situation has just got worse. The government is now on to its fifth NHS recovery plan, its fourth Health Minister, its third First Minister since that promise, and the crisis only deepens. Thousands of people are waiting over 2 years for procedures in specialisms including ENT, neurosurgery, orthopaedics, that's hip and knee replacements, and gynaecology, including ovarian surgery like Tracy. When will John Swinney finally just come clean and admit that he and his government have utterly failed and that he has no plan to fix Scotland's NHS?
First Minister.
What I'd say to Mr Sarwar is that I welcome the acknowledgement in his question of the significant impact of the COVID pandemic, because all of us must realise that the pandemic had a serious and detrimental effect on the ability of the National Health Service over a period essentially of about 2 years to be able to tackle the health issues that members of the public face. That's why we have a plan in place to focus on expanding capacity, and what I set out earlier on this year involves enhancing the capacity of national treatment centres, about expanding regional delivery of healthcare services to increase levels of activity, and to put in place additional capacity in hospitals like Gartnavel, Inverclyde, Stracathro, Perth Royal Infirmary and Queen Margaret Hospital to deliver more procedures in exactly the specialisms that Mr Sarwar has put to me. So I acknowledge the scale of the challenge, and we're putting in place the practical expansion of capacity to make sure we can treat more patients, and that's exactly what the Government is focused on doing.
Anna Sarwar.
Just like this SNP government, the plan is not working and Scotland needs a new direction. And there is a human cost of SNP failure. Take the case of Eileen Kelly, an 80-year-old grandmother from the south side of Glasgow. Eileen is living with severe osteoarthritis in both hips, so severe in fact that her entire right hip has disintegrated. When she most needed help, she was told that she was facing a wait of 2.5 years on the NHS. And due to the severe pain she is in, she's had to pay over £10,000 to be treated privately. Eileen told me, "I live 2 flights up and I've been left immobile and in agony. I've worked and paid taxes all my life, but when I needed the NHS, the SNP let me down. I feel betrayed and abandoned." This is the reality of the NHS after 2 decades of SNP rule. 1 in 6 Scots on an NHS waiting list, waits soaring and thousands being forced to go private. So why has John Swinney and SNP incompetence left our NHS on life support?
First Minister.
In his previous question, Mr Sarwar referenced the significance of the COVID pandemic. And all of us must realistically look at the fact that the COVID pandemic interrupted the ability to deliver healthcare services for members of the public for a 2-year period, and it takes a period of recovery time from that. It needs focus, it needs direction to ensure it is successful, and the measures I've set out about the expansion of capacity are designed to do that. Now, I'm sorry that Ms Kelly has had the experience that she has had. Obviously, there are individuals who are getting treatment earlier than she has received or been promised in this circumstance, because there is an ability to put forward legitimate clinical cases for urgent intervention where that is able to be undertaken. And if Mr Sarwar wants to furnish me with the details of the case, I will examine exactly what's happened in this circumstance. But we are working to make sure we've got the staff and the resources in place to address this issue. What will not help us is the approach that has now been taken on immigration, because anyone looking at the details of what's been set out by the UK Government in turning off the ability of us being able to attract international workers will realise that that's a very damaging blow to our health service. Because our health service, and I saw data from Scottish Care, for example, about social care, is heavily dependent.
Let's hear one another.
Is heavily dependent on international workers. And if the UK Government decides to turn off the ability of the Scottish Health Service to attract international workers, it will make our challenge to address the waiting times issue ever more difficult as a consequence of the actions of the UK Government. So I appeal to Mr Sarwar to join me in what I said to the Prime Minister on Friday. The immigration proposals will be damaging to our National Health Service, and we don't want anything to do with them.
Question number 3, Patrick Harvey.
Outside Parliament today, people gathered to express their anger at the Scottish Government's intention to approve a resort development by Flamingo Land on the shores of Loch Lomond. It's been opposed by the National Trust for Scotland, by the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, by over 155,000 people, and it was rejected unanimously by the National Park. It's the most unpopular development in the history of the Scottish planning system. Now, I know the First Minister is about to tell us that he can't comment on a specific appeal, but his Minister has already made a political decision. It took Ivan McKee just 2 working days to announce his refusal to act in the public interest and recall the appeal. So he and the First Minister have to be accountable for that now. There is still a chance we can save Loch Lomond. This decision isn't set in stone. So will the First Minister listen to all those who have been objecting for years and put the natural environment ahead of corporate profit and recall this decision?
First Minister.
As Mr Harvey has indicated, as the appeal remains live, members have to understand that it would not be appropriate for me to comment in detail on the proposal. I am aware that the reporter has issued a notice of intention to allow the appeal and to grant planning permission in principle, subject to 49 planning conditions and the reaching of a legal agreement, including the Lomond Promise, with a commitment to community benefits and fair work. The reporter is required to make his decision on the planning merits of the case and to take full account of all submissions made by the parties involved in this case, including representations from members of the local community.
Patrick Harvey.
I'm afraid I really don't think the First Minister is even attempting to acknowledge the scale of anger about this issue. Anger that's been demonstrated by people outside Parliament today, that's been demonstrated by 44,000 people who've already written to the Minister, and anger that is a result of this unnecessary, unwanted and destructive development. But of course, it's not the first time that this First Minister has defended that kind of development. In 2007, when John Swinney had been in government for less than a year, he overturned a local planning decision to approve another controversial, environmentally destructive project from a greedy, bullying developer. That, of course, was to give Donald Trump his golf course. And even Trump's project director from those days has made it clear that the government was hoodwinked. This isn't standing up for Scotland. Did the First Minister learn nothing from his mistake? And why is he still willing to back greedy developers who can't look at a landscape without seeing an opportunity to bulldoze it for profit?
First Minister.
So I'm absolutely committed to the protection of the natural environment of Scotland, and in all the decisions that I would take and in the steps I would take, I value and cherish the natural environment of Scotland. The reporter has got to come to a decision based on the planning merits of the case, and in this particular circumstance, on a whole range of different conditions, the reporter has established a notice of intention to allow the appeal subject to 49 planning conditions that I'm sure address the issues that Mr Harvey is raising with me. So these issues have to be the subject of further discussion, and that's the proper exercise of the planning process, which I am obliged by law to ensure is the case.
Question number 4, Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister whether he will provide an update on the Scottish Government's latest engagement with the UK Government regarding their plans for winter fuel payment and any implications this has for the Scottish Government's work to deliver a universal pension age winter heating payment in Scotland.
First Minister.
President Officer, since the Prime Minister made his announcement, the Scottish Government has not been furnished with detail, and the lack of information is only adding further to uncertainty. The Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Local Government has written to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury this week, urging the UK Government to share its plans with us as quickly as possible so that we can understand any implications for our own programmes and, crucially, also for our budget.
Claire Adamson.
Thank the First Minister for his answer. Under pressure, the Prime Minister has effectively admitted that Labour's winter fuel payment cut was wrong. But the lack of information from the UK Government on how, when or if they will means test the winter fuel payment is causing anxiety for pensioners. First Ministers, are our pensioners to be kept in the dark as well as in the cold? First Minister.
President Officer, Claire Adamson is right to highlight the lack of information that has come since the Prime Minister made his statement a week ago yesterday. So we await further detail and implications for Scotland. What I would say to Claire Adamson is that pensioners in Scotland should be absolutely assured that where the Labour Government decided as one of their first acts to remove winter fuel payments from pensioners, the Scottish National Party government has stepped in, and we have introduced a universal payment that will provide support to over 812,000 pensioner households in Scotland, support that is not available anywhere else in the United Kingdom. So the people of Scotland, and crucially the pensioners of Scotland, can see that where the Labour government takes away the winter fuel payment, the SNP government will restore it.
Question number 5, Stephen Kerr.
To ask the First Minister, in light of it being almost 5 years since the Scottish Government committed to spending £60 million to renew every play park in Scotland, and of reports that less than half of the funding has been spent, what action the Scottish Government is taking to ensure that children do not miss out on renewed facilities?
First Minister.
President Officer, the Scottish Government has provided £35 million to local authority partners, which has already seen 1,100 play parks renewed since September 2021. In 2025-26, we are providing a further £25 million to help accelerate local authorities' plans and make more parks welcoming, free and accessible spaces for all children to enjoy. This means our £60 million commitment will be met by my government, and based on a scoping exercise undertaken by COSLA in 2022, we estimate this will allow a total renewal of nearly 2,000 play parks, including all parks assessed by local authorities as being in need of immediate renewal.
Stephen Kerr.
First Minister, that sounds like another Swinney broken promise to me, because he promised a free tablet, laptop, internet connection to every child in Scotland, a free bike for every child, to close the attainment gap, to recruit an additional 3,500 teachers, free school breakfasts and lunch to every primary school pupil in Scotland all year round. He's failed on every promise, and now he will fail on delivering the promise of refurbishing every play park in Scotland by the end of this Parliament. Why should the people of this country believe anything the First Minister says when everywhere we look we see this SNP government offering up big empty election gimmicks, then failing to deliver?
I would remind all members that we use full names or titles in the Chamber. First Minister.
I think Stephen Kerr needs to go to a play park to get rid of some of his excess energy.
Let's hear one another.
He seems just a little bit too excited for words today. Let me inject some basic arithmetic into Parliament today. 25 add 35 equals 60, which equals the fulfilment of the government's promise. And one of the basic foundations of being a Member of Parliament is when you don't get the answer that you expect, you've got to pivot to deal with it. And Mr Kerr can't handle that.
Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I've got a bizarre and inexplicable tolerance of Mr Kerr, who makes even a sunny day is like that black cloud that appears even only temporarily. Can I, in terms of the playgrounds...
Ms Graham, please have a seat. Sorry, Mr Lumsden, were you trying to attract attention? I'm just asking why you were shouting from your seat. Please desist. Christine Graham.
Can I say, Presiding Officer, that on playgrounds, can I commend the fact, apart from the fact that Mr Kerr seems to need an abacus rather than a playground, that in the Borders £800,000 has already been allocated, £1 million in Midlothian. And on a serious note, after COVID, when children were isolated for so long socially and having fresh air and having fun, it's an excellent project that liberates them to the safe space of a playground, not too safe, but safe enough.
First Minister.
I think Christine Graham makes an incredibly powerful point, because in the aftermath of COVID, when we all know there were negative implications on children and young people in our society, making sure there are good facilities for children and young people to enjoy is part of the work that we have to do. I had the pleasure, with the Deputy First Minister, of seeing some of that improvement work that's been undertaken in Kirkintilloch some weeks ago, and it's happening in other parts of the country, and I'm not surprised it's been welcomed by my wise colleague Christine Graham.
Martin Whitfield.
Very grateful, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government's promise was to renew every play park. Will it be every play park?
Well, I answered the point in my earlier answer where a scoping
Sorry, First Minister. Mr Kerr, you have had an opportunity to put questions to the First Minister, and I would now ask you to desist from shouting from your seat. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Government undertook an exercise with the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, working with our local authority partners to determine the way in which this approach could best be taken to complement local work. That's the Government working in partnership with local authorities. That's what Parliament always asked us to do, and once again, the Government's delivered.
Question number 6, Monica Lennon.
To ask the First Minister what action the Scottish Government is taking to maintain its policy aim of keeping pace with the EU on environmental protection.
First Minister.
President Officer, the Scottish Government is committed to remaining aligned with the EU where it is possible and meaningful for Scotland to do so. This commitment is reflected in our annual reports to the Scottish Parliament on the use of the alignment power under the Continuity Act. Many of our environmental regulations were derived from EU law, and this is an important area for consideration of alignment. We are currently assessing the revised EU Environmental Crime Directive, including its provision for higher penalties for serious environmental harm, equivalent to ecocide.
Monica Lennon.
I thank the First Minister for his response. The Ecocide Scotland Bill would make it a criminal offence to cause widespread, long-term or irreversible environmental damage, with up to 20 years in prison for individuals and unlimited fines for organisations. Ecocide law was pioneered by the trailblazing Scottish lawyer, the late Polly Higgins. The EU and many countries worldwide are acting to deter and punish these devastating crimes. This is Scotland's time to act. So does the First Minister agree with the bill's aims, and does he welcome this vital opportunity for Scotland to become the first UK nation to criminalise ecocide?
First Minister.
President Officer, first of all, let me compliment Monica Lennon on the diligent work that she has undertaken to engage with many stakeholders and many parties, and also with the Government, on the formulation of the bill that she has now introduced to Parliament. I recognise the importance that she attaches to this piece of legislation, and the Government understands the significance of the points that are raised. We will, of course, consider the bill that Monica Lennon has brought forward and would welcome further dialogue with her on this question. We are committed to the protection of our natural environment, which is represented by the introduction in February of the Natural Environment Bill. But of course we will give very serious consideration to the points raised by Monica Lennon, because the conduct and the implications and the impact of the issues that she is raising are detrimental to our natural environment, and we have to protect that.
Question number 7, Willie Rennie.
To ask the First Minister for what reason there has reportedly been no financial agreement between the Scottish Funding Council and the University of Dundee in light of the Alternative Financial Recovery Plan being launched 4 weeks ago.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the University of Dundee is an autonomous institution responsible for its own decision-making powers and must consider whether further financial support is required. As of this morning, we have not yet received any request from the Scottish Funding Council. However, as I have reiterated throughout this issue, the Scottish Government and the Funding Council will give careful consideration to any request for additional support within the legislative framework. I am encouraged by the University's commitment to minimise job losses, but it is vital that the University consults on its revised plan with its community, including with trade unions and the Strategic Advisory Task Force chaired by Sir Alan Langlands.
Willie Rennie.
This has been agonising for university staff. A cloud has been hanging over them since November, and that's 7 months ago. And they simply cannot understand that why we still have no financial agreement 4 weeks on from the publication of the new financial recovery plan. One staff member had tears in her eyes as she told me about the toll that it's taking on her and her family. So how much longer does the First Minister think that she will have to wait?
First Minister.
First of all, President Officer, let me sympathise and empathise with the point that Mr Rennie raises with me on behalf of his constituent. At my constituency surgery on Monday, I had a member of staff come to see me in my constituency capacity, essentially conveying the very same message. So I understand entirely where Mr Rennie is coming from, and I want to make sure the Government acts properly and effectively to address the legitimate concerns that he puts to me. He will, of course, acknowledge, because he is entirely familiar with the legislative arrangements that we have, that the University of Dundee operates as an autonomous institution. It has to take the initiative to come to the Funding Council and the Government. What I assure Mr Rennie about is that this issue has got the most active engagement of the First Minister, the Deputy First Minister and the Education Secretary and the Higher Education Minister within Government, and we are ready to consider any requests that are made to us properly by the University of Dundee and the Funding Council.
Michael Mara.
And this is what they had to say to me. The weight of not knowing, of being left in limbo, is taking a huge toll on mental health and morale. It's not just us, it's our families too. The endless delays and broken promises from management and government are leaving us all in despair. When will they do something? The Government's own target is 300 job losses, and the costings, I am told, have now been submitted and are with officials. Can the First Minister commit to Parliament today that the voluntary severance scheme will be in place and open by the end of next week?
First Minister.
Well, Mr Mara knows I can't give that commitment, because that would be me dictating to an independent institution how it should go about its own governance, and I would break the law if I did that. It's as simple as that. Now, I'm trying to give Mr Mara a substantive answer, if he would allow me to do that. I understand the anxieties of members of staff, because they come to my constituency surgeries. I hear it very directly, and I totally accept the worry and the anxiety that is caused. But I have to operate within the existing legal framework, and I give Mr Mara, as I give to Parliament, as I give to members of staff at the University of Dundee, the absolute commitment the Government is engaging actively and promptly on all of these questions. And lastly, let me say this. I have said to Parliament on a previous occasion my absolute commitment to securing the future of the University of Dundee. I unreservedly reiterate that in front of Parliament today, and the Government will follow that approach in all that we do.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries, and I call George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would like to welcome the news that Green Aircraft engine developer Zero Avia will establish a major manufacturing base in Scotland, creating 350 jobs. Can I ask the First Minister, what assessment has the Scottish Government made of the economic impact of this investment, and can he say more about the steps the Scottish Government is taking to attract inward investment like this throughout Scotland?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, Mr Adam raises a particular case which is directly relevant to the answers I gave to Russell Finlay earlier on, because Mr Adam raises the case of Zero Avia, which has decided to locate its manufacturing facility of hydrogen fuel cell technology for air travel at the Advanced Manufacturing District in Shinnon. As a consequence of that, there will be up to 350 jobs created, so that's in the low-carbon technologies, 350 high-skilled, high-value jobs being created, made possible by the investment, yes, of Zero Avia, but also the investment of the United Kingdom Government's National Wealth Fund and the Scottish Government's the Scottish National Investment Bank that acts on our behalf, and by investment from Scottish Enterprise. So this is a classic example of how, by working with the private sector, the Government can attract investment. This is the work the Deputy First Minister is leading within Government to make sure that we attract investment into Scotland and that we create economic opportunity out of the journey to net zero, which is the point I was making to Mr Finlay in my earlier answer. I am delighted that there will be a positive economic impact in Mr Adams' constituency in Paisley and also in the constituency of my colleague Natalie Donanis.
Oliver Mundell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Having milked the public purse for years while the going was good, Stagecoach have now decided to throw Dumfries and Galloway under the bus, with reports they're planning to exit the region altogether, abandoning over 100 members of staff, closing 2 depots in Dumfries and Stranraer, and even handing back school transport contracts. This presents a huge challenge across a large rural local authority, and constituents are seeking urgent reassurance that they will still be able to get to work, school and hospital appointments. Will the First Minister commit the Government and its agencies to working with Dumfries and Galloway Council to help ensure bus services do not collapse and explore alternative options that will help retain current drivers and staff?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I understand this issue, this is part of a live procurement exercise that's been led by Dumfries and Galloway Council. And that is going through a process, and the Scottish Government has no involvement in that decision-making process. I am assured that local authority officers are working through options as part of the procurement process, but I understand the point that Mr Mundell puts to me of the importance of sustaining community travel services in Dumfries and Galloway. They will be challenging enough for members of the public without any diminution of those services. So I will ask my officials to look at the situation to see if there is any scope for the Government to assist in reaching agreement. But what I'm being advised so far is that this is a live procurement exercise involving the Council. But I'll take Mr Mundell's point away and consider how the Government can assist in any way.
Colin Smith.
First Minister, do you accept that, given the scale of the services provided by Stagecoach in the region, where they have a near monopoly on school transport and those lifeline subsidised services, that we do need to look at alternatives urgently, because we cannot face a situation where school kids in August may not be able to get to school through bus transport because of the actions as part of this negotiation at the moment, and lifeline services are taken away? It is an example of the fact that the bus network system is broken in this country, and big companies have a monopoly, and when they walk away, it's communities that miss out most.
First Minister.
I do accept the final point that Mr Smith makes, and hence the importance of, in this exercise, Dumfries and Galloway Council acting in a fashion that enables the continuity of services to be provided. I think there are obviously legislative options, but there are opportunities available in legislation for bus services to be organised in a different way. That's been provided for by the legislation that this Government has enacted. But I accept that in the timescale that Mr Smith and Mr Mundell have put to me, it is very urgent for there to be a resolution on this question. So I'll give Mr Smith the assurance I gave Mr Mundell that the Transport Secretary will look at this case and see if there's anything the Government can do to try to help to resolve matters, to ensure continuity of services, which is a legitimate expectation from Mr Smith.
Colin Beattie.
Can I ask the First Minister how the Memorandum of Understanding between the Scottish Government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, committing our Government and that of Ukraine to strengthening trade and investment links, will allow Scotland to do its part in supporting Ukraine to rebuild their country in the face of Russia's illegal war? And can I ask the First Minister to make a commitment to Parliament and to the country that his Government will keep under active review the ways in which Scotland can support the future of Ukraine and, by extension, the peace and stability of Europe?
First Minister.
President Officer, I had the enormous pleasure on Tuesday evening, along with Richard Lockhead, the Business Minister, to meet with the delegation who have come, delegation of mayors from around Ukraine who have come to Scotland to sign the trade agreement and also to encourage collaboration. The agreement was signed by the Cabinet Secretary for External Affairs, Angus Robertson, on Wednesday on the Government's behalf. And this dialogue has been encouraged and enabled by the work of the cross-party group in Parliament on Ukraine, of which Mr Beattie is the convener, I understand, and I'm really grateful to the cross-party group for that support. This is one example about how we can establish further cooperation and collaboration with Ukraine as the country tries to recover from the illegal invasion of Ukraine. But it also is an opportunity for me to indicate our resolute support for the people of Ukraine. I was in London on Friday and I met the Prime Minister, and I have to say, of all the things the Prime Minister said to me on Friday, I cannot compliment enough his resolution in support of Ukraine in all that he said to me and to leaders of other devolved governments on Friday. And I applaud the Prime Minister for that resolute support. He speaks on behalf of the Scottish Parliament about the importance of us standing up to Russian aggression, protecting Ukraine and securing its future. And we will stand steadfast with the people of Ukraine in that regard.
Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Due to historic SNP cuts, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has brought forward plans to scrap 24/7 fire cover at Hoyk Fire Station. This will leave towns and nearby communities at risk. I met with firefighters this month who told me how these cuts will pose a direct threat to them and residents across the borders. Will the First Minister join my campaign to save Hoyk Fire Station? And given the very real danger this will pose to my constituents, I feel it's imperative he gets back behind this campaign.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is undertaking a consultation on different aspects of service redesign. They will conduct that in an engaged fashion. There are 23 service delivery review options that are being considered as part of a full public consultation that will commence at the end of June 2025. So obviously the points that Rachel Hamilton has made can be part of that consultation. In relation to, and it's important that, and that will be approached by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service on the basis of what is a sustainable approach to fire and rescue cover around the country. And that, of course, varies around the country based on the number of incidents and the level of risk that is carried in particular localities. But it will be carried out on a professional basis by SFRS. In relation to the financial questions, the Government has increased the budget for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service by £18.1 million for this financial year, and indeed the budget has increased by £97 million since 2017-18. So the Government's been investing, but from time to time the Fire and Rescue Service needs to explore what is the right deployment of its resources, and it will do that in a professional way whilst protecting public safety.
Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Following the UK Government's delayed publication of its child poverty strategy, Save the Children has warned this will mean 20,000 more children will be dragged into poverty. Does the First Minister share my concern that Westminster's inaction is yet again getting in the way of Scottish Government's work to eradicate child poverty in South Scotland and across the rest of Scotland?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I think it's important that action is taken across all governments to eradicate child poverty. That's the focus of my government. We're taking steps to... We have the child payment in place, which is increasing this year. We have taken the decision to abolish the two-child limit, which is an important step in lifting children out of poverty. My plea to the Prime Minister on Friday was that the UK Government acts in a way that assists us in our endeavour to eradicate child poverty. I am concerned that the steps that have been taken on welfare reform will throw more children into poverty, and I hope that a different course of action is taken by the United Kingdom Government, because we are committed to eradicating child poverty, and it would be helpful, after all these years of austerity and the damage done by the Conservatives, if a Labour Government could help us in our work to eradicate child poverty.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, it has been reported that Police Scotland receive approximately 20,000 calls per month relating to mental health issues. The impact of the demand on the ability for the service is significant, with a lack of suitably trained psychologists, a lack of continued fast-tracking for individuals who have ability to be looked after, which should not include police custody suites. What action is the Scottish Government taking to urgently support police officers during this mental health crisis?
First Minister.
Well, President Officer, we are taking a number of steps to expand mental health capacity. For example, we've exceeded our commitment to fund over 800 additional mental health workers in various locations, including accident emergency departments, GP practices and in other public sector facilities. We are also supporting the expansion of community-based support, with over £145 million invested since 2020 in community ventures to support young people. In addition to that, nearly 83,000 children, young people and their family members have accessed community-based mental health support between July 2023 and March 2024. And I think this indicates that we are building capacity to make sure that the mental health needs of the population are effectively addressed in community settings around the country.
That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Michelle Thompson, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the public gallery and chamber to do so.